As the title says, I want to go over a few suspicious characters from Oshi no Ko that may know a lot more than they're led to be believed, or at the very least, should know more. Those are Kindaichi Toshirou, Frill Shiranui, Masaya Kaburagi, and Taishi Gotanda. And let's talk about Kindaichi Toshirou first. I mentioned Kindaichi being suspicious in one of my videos because of chapter 96, where we learned that not only does Kindaichi know Hikaru Kamiki, but he had also worked with him when he was a teenager, knows he owns a production agency, knows he has a habit of sending white roses to members of Lalalie, and holds Kamiki in high regards as he was one of the best performers of Lalalie. Therefore, Kindaichi has a great knowledge of Hikaru Kamiki. We also know that Kamiki is the father of Taiki Himekawa, a talented member of Lalalie who is very close to Kindaichi. We could even say that Kindaichi is Taiki's father by choice, we'll get into that very soon. Now Aqua has worked with Kindaichi on the Tokyo Blade play, and we saw in chapter 96 that Hikaru Kamiki looked exactly like Aqua when he was his age. Therefore, Kindaichi should have noticed the resemblance between them and put 2 and 2 together. I mean, come on, Aqua is literally a dead ringer for Kamiki. In chapter 66, Masaya Kaburagi and Kindaichi talk about who's the most promising actor from the Tokyo Blade play. Kana and Nakane obviously pop up, but at the end of their conversation, Kindaichi says that he is personally interested in... Now, who could that person be? Well, there are only 2 people of importance left, Melt and Aqua. It's not Melt because the one who's interested in him is Kaburagi. Kindaichi doesn't even comment on Melt's performance, while Kaburagi supports him throughout the Tokyo Blade play. So by process of elimination, Kindaichi is most definitely referring to Aqua. It could be because he found Aqua's emotional acting genuine, as he says in chapter 67, or because his acting style is similar to Taiki's in the sense that both are missing something in their lives. Either way, he's interested in Aqua. On top of that, it's very likely that Kindaichi was aware of Ai's relationship with Kamiki since he was part of Lalalie when the relationship took place, and he interacted with both. Aqua's conversation with Kindaichi from chapter 67 supports this, and let's have a look at that. Aqua asks Kindaichi about his history with Lalalie, and Kindaichi mentions how hard it was to get members to join. They had to use several people who they've gathered through workshops for their performances. Remember that I joined one of Lalalie's workshops, and I think this is likely how they've met, Kindaichi and Ai. Interestingly enough, in the anime, Kindaichi even attends Ai's funeral. So based on all of this, Kindaichi Toshirou should at the very least make the connection between Aqua and Kamiki. I thought that Kindaichi might have forgotten Kamiki and that's why he didn't make the connection with Aqua, but it's clear he didn't. He remembers Kamiki's eyes, his performance, he even knows his current whereabouts, therefore Kindaichi didn't forget. And that means he must know about the resemblance between the two. Of course, he should know a lot more than that, but as Akane said, it's kept a secret. Now, from what Akane mentioned in chapter 96, this secret should at least include the Lalalie story of Kamiki and Ai, which in turn would make Kindaichi aware of what went down between the two. Whether he's also aware of Airi Himekawa doesn't change that much, it's a bigger secret but fundamentally the same. There's also a chance that Kindaichi purposely told Akane about Kamiki to show her the truth, but there isn't enough information at the moment for me to support this idea. We might touch on it later in the video. An interesting piece of information though comes from the anime, which I'm not going to use as canon, but it's worth mentioning. During Ai's funeral, we can actually see Kindaichi attending it. His only interaction with Ai should have been during the time when she was practicing at Lalalie, during the time she had a relationship with Kamiki, so Kindaichi knows 100% about Ai and Kamiki but keeps it a secret. Why is that? Akane wonders why hasn't anyone mentioned that Ai learned acting from Kamiki, since her acting style was very similar to his. Then she concluded that maybe they chose to keep it a secret. Now my first thought was that it was obviously kept a secret because Ai became an idol. She wasn't an idol when she first visited Lalalie, but she was developing as one. She was definitely an established idol when she got pregnant though. Revealing that she had a relationship during that time would affect her career, even crush it. So it makes sense to keep it a secret from that perspective. Now I would assume that when Ai got pregnant, she stopped going to Lalalie. After a few months, people would notice her belly getting bigger. If that's the case, then nobody from Lalalie should know about her pregnancy. That includes Kindaichi Toshirou. But here's where Taiki Himekawa comes into play. Taiki's parents committed double suicide when he was around 5 years old. We're not going into details about that. We know Kindaichi picked up Taiki from an orphanage, then raised him as his child. The curious thing here is, why? Why did Kindaichi go to an orphanage? Why did he pick Taiki, who, as he said, was a nobody? How this interaction even came to be? What were the chances that he would pick Airi and Kamiki's son? It's strange, unless he knew who he was going to pick. Now, Kamiki would be around 16 years old at this time, not in a position to take care of a child for several obvious reasons. We don't even know if he wanted a child. It also seems that he doesn't have parents or they weren't in touch with him. But what if, say, Airi Himekawa asked Kindaichi to look after Taiki? Since it's heavily implied that her husband killed her and himself after he found out about what she did, it wouldn't be far-fetched to say that Kindaichi found out about Airi and Kamiki's secret. Whether it was from Airi herself or Seijuro or Kamiki, it actually doesn't really matter, as long as someone told him or he figured it out somehow. So, knowing that Taiki is Airi and Kamiki's child, he took care of him. He went to the orphanage, found him and took care of him. Therefore, Kindaichi knows that Taiki is Airi and Kamiki's son, and he also knows what went down between the two of them. If he didn't know who Taiki was, he wouldn't have adopted him. Which leads into Ai. When Ai got pregnant, both her and Kamiki left Lalalie. Apparently, Kamiki focused on his education while Ai went into a hiatus, both essentially cutting ties with Kindaichi. Now, why is that? It makes sense for Ai to leave, she wasn't a member or interested in becoming an actress, but why did Kamiki leave? Or did he leave? Let's look again at that conversation from chapter 67 between Aqua and Kindaichi. Kindaichi said that Lalalie struggled to assemble members, and so they had several public performances using people that came in through their workshops. However, it was a flop, something he'll do never again. When Aqua tries to pry further, Kindaichi shuts him down by saying that it's not a story for kids. Which is interesting because I would assume the flop he's referring to means the performance was crap, unsuccessful. But how is a failed performance not a story for kids? What happens next is that Kindaichi gets drunk but doesn't talk about his past failures. If that flop was a failed performance, would he really not touch on it? Even when he's drunk? Doesn't make that much sense, does it? It shouldn't be that big of a deal. This should mean that flop is a bit more serious than we're led to believe. And here's what's interesting. So, Lalalie had several public performances using people from their workshops, one of them being Ai. Ai and Kamiki were very close during the time these public performances were happening. Then Ai got pregnant and left the workshop. And I'm going to say that Kindaichi found out about what they did, maybe he figured it out by himself or maybe someone told him, and since they were minors, that would not only destroy their lives and careers, but also affect Lalalie, the heart and soul of Kindaichi. And so, he kicked Kamiki from Lalalie because it doesn't make sense for Kamiki to suddenly leave and focus on something else entirely when he was such a great actor. I don't think Kindaichi would let him abandon acting if it wasn't for what he did. And so, he kicked him and kept the event a secret. That was the flop that he would never do again and why it's not a story for kids. As Akane said in chapter 97, the entertainment world was full of stories that made us want to plug our ears. Perhaps Kindaichi kept the secret out of guilt, given that he doesn't have a problem talking about Kamiki to Akane, or perhaps to keep Lalalie's image clean. Whatever the reason, this is what I think Kindaichi is hiding. I'm actually pretty sure of it. Now, another character shrouded in a peculiar type of mystery is Frill Shiranui. I want to have more of a discussion about her rather than a full-on theory, because at the moment the theory leans towards the speculation more than anything, but let's go through it anyway so you see what I'm talking about. I said in my video on the DVDs that in this scene right here, Aqua asks Frill to help Ruby get the role of Ai. Based on the paneling and what was discussed before, I thought this was the most likely outcome. Aqua telling Frill about the script and why he wants Ruby to get the role. However, there is another way this could have played out. What if someone else asked Frill to help Ruby get the role? The first person that came to my mind was Taishi, Gotanda, and you may be wondering why him. Gotanda said something very interesting in chapter 5. He explained that there are 3 types of actresses you can define. The cover girl, whose role is to bring in as many views and form an audience, synonymous with bring in the money, setting box office records. The talented one, whose role is to ensure quality, and the newbie. No expectations from them, as long as they bring freshness to the screen, they get a passing grade. I think you might have already made the connection. If you keep in mind these 3 types of actresses and compare them to the contenders for Ai's role, you got Frill Shiranui as the obvious cover girl. She's the one who'll bring in the most money according to Kaburagi. Akane is the most talented one as she keeps getting acting awards, and Ruby is, of course, the newbie. No acting abilities, but her presence draws people in. If you remember back in chapter 5, Gotanda was pleasantly surprised by Ai's screen presence, and he kept offering her jobs afterwards. Now we know Gotanda wants Ruby to play the role of Ai, so it's not far-fetched to say that he used his connections to get to Frill and requested her help. Or maybe Gotanda isn't involved and someone more sinister pulls the strings. Could that person be Hikaru Kamiki? I mean, is that even possible? Let's break this down. So we know Kamiki has a particular interest in Ruby. He tells that to Yurakata Yosei. He also saw Ruby at Ai's grave, and it's heavily implied through his dialogue that he wants something to do with Ruby. We also know that he has a tendency to mess with talented women who have those starry eyes. Now keep in mind that while Frill Shiranui is a multi-talented person who's quite popular, she doesn't have the eyes. She wouldn't theoretically be a target for Kamiki. She does have unique cat-like eyes, but not starry eyes. Now Kamiki has also got his own production company, Kamiki Production. That means he works with talent from the industry and might even have people that are linked to his company, and of course I'm implying that one of those people is Frill Shiranui. Now in the manga, there isn't any information about which agency Frill works for. No name, no hints, nothing. And you may think, well, how can she work for Kamiki's agency if there's no information to link them together? But what's interesting is that we know the agencies for every other supporting character that shows up. Just think about it. Narushima Melt, Sonic Stage Productions. Minami Kotobuki, Kureha's agency. Raida Sumiaki, Magic Floors Agency. Yurakata Yosei, SA Entertainment. Akane Kurokawa works for an agency. Maybe the name is mentioned somewhere, I just couldn't find it. But from chapter 23, we know this is her manager, this is the president of her agency. We know from chapter 96 that she received flowers from her agency. Her manager is behind her in this panel. And flowers from Lalalie. We know a bunch of information about her agency. There are a few actors that work for Lalalie, a few for Kaburagi, but no information about who Frill Shiranui is supposed to work for. And what I found strange is that we're now in an arc, the movie arc, in which plenty of names are being dropped left and right. Distribution companies, investing companies, agencies and so on. You'd think it might be a great moment to learn more about Frill Shiranui, maybe drop the name of her agency, yet we get nothing. Of course, this doesn't mean she's 100% part of Kamiki Production, but it's odd that we learn the agencies for every other supporting character, but not Frill Shiranui. Now, the events surrounding Frill Shiranui and the role of Ai might shed some light on this. If we look at chapter 113, we can see that the role of Ai was guaranteed to be given to Frill Shiranui. Other than her acting capabilities, she's also going to bring the most money with her, according to Masaya Kaburagi. It seems like Frill herself was aware of that. In fact, she knew if she simply accepted the role, there would be no competition. But if she rejected the role, then Akane would most likely get it instead. She tells Ruby how she would want to be chosen because of her acting abilities, not her popularity. And she comes up with this interpersonal audition between her, Ruby and Akane, with the intended purpose of giving the role to Ruby, as she admits when confronted by Akane, a task in which she succeeds. It also seems like Frill had no intention of actually playing the role of Ai, which brings up the question of why did Frill want Ruby to play the role? And this is where the theory leans towards speculation because it could go in 3 different ways. The first one, upon reading the script for the movie and realized that Aqua is trying to kill his father, she decided that Ruby would fit the best to portray her mother's feelings. Which is a bit odd, as Ruby didn't want to be part of the movie to begin with, and other than moving the plot forward, it feels like Frill's decision came out of the blue. Now second, Aqua requested her help in order to get Ruby to play the role. This would increase the success of his plan as Ruby would play along, but it would also decrease it as he needs the movie to be a big success. And third, somebody else wanted Ruby to have the lead role. Could be Gotanda or maybe Kamiki. Now, the thing is that, theoretically, all of these routes are possible. At the moment, there isn't enough information to favor a route completely, and judging by the current direction of the manga, I don't think we'll find out more anytime soon. So this is where I'll leave it, for now. I know there's still Masaya Kaburagi and Taishi Gotanda to talk about, but I've not quite finished the script on Kaburagi, so I decided to just split the video. I'm also taking a holiday and I wanted to have a video out before that. So with that being said, thank you for watching and let's see how the story of Oshinoko progresses.